As I had indicated in my release, we have not in the modern era ever expelled anybody who has not been convicted of a crime, not accused, not even having a really strong trail. And let's be clear, I don't think George Santos is, let me be charitable, a high quality individual. All right, let's leave it at that. But at the end of the day, I'm afraid that this is a slippery slope to the further and deepening politicization and weaponization of the processes that we've seen here in Washington, D.C. And so, look, we know if you look at individuals like Charlie Rangel and others who have had serious issues, including being, tax fraud in Charlie Rangel's circumstances, they were not removed from office. I believe it is only when the courts have ruled that is when the House should take actions. Otherwise, it's up to the voters in each of those districts.
Well, of course, these allegations were wild when the Ethics Committee report came out. It felt like more than allegations, which I know made a number of members feel like they had no choice. The last line of your statement is one we should read as well, Congressman. You write, "In America, even dirtbags deserve due process." The House could have trouble with dirtbags in office, Congressman. Do you also empathize with the members who wanted him gone?
Yeah, I certainly do, and I understand it. I promised one of my Ethics Committee friends that I would read through the entire report, which I did last night. Made notes, made notations in the report. I think it's very credible with what they have accused him of and the evidence that they have and that they're presenting. But they're very clear that there's FBI involvement, there's the Department of Justice, and all of this has to be turned over to the Attorney General as well. And as distasteful as he is, and the actions as distasteful as they are, and very possibly potentially illegal, that needs to rise to such a level. I mean, this is the most serious thing we can do in the House of Representatives, because we have just taken 750,000 people's voice off the voting board. They no longer have their voice being heard in Congress. And that is a very, very serious thing. And I understand. I've had extensive conversations with my very good friends from New York and Long Island and in that area that are having to live with him in that space and in the media and all those things. But I also know that there has been a deepening of the weaponization of the processes and the policies of government over the last few years. And frankly, I think expulsion and impeachment have become sort of the new censure. It used to be in the day. In fact, I was here when Charlie Rangel was censured. It was serious. I mean, it was somber. It was really heartfelt. And now it just seems like this has become far more commonplace. And frankly, for once, I'd like to have a boring week in Washington where we actually legislated. That would be helpful. We haven't been doing a whole lot of that lately, and it's all been more personal and vendettas and pinched fingers and massive egos, it seems. And we got to get back to serving the American people.
I have been asking, Congressman, if this leads to, a new era of expulsion votes. That's going to be, to your point, that's going to be the new weapon. Every time somebody says something that someone doesn't like, we go through the expulsion vote, watering things down. You could argue the way impeachment has been watered down. But it's important to note, you're down to 434 members again. You've got a very slim margin as a Republican majority, and you testified before the Budget Committee recently in support of your Fiscal Commission Act to save Social Security from a massive cut in the next decade. How do you get anything like that done on a serious level when it comes to policy and spending with such a thin majority?
Yeah, well, here's the real truth of the matter is, something like that is not going to happen on a partisan vote line. That has to be bipartisan. It has to be bicameral, meaning both the House and the Senate have to agree on a direction. And that's why I'm actually very, very encouraged by what happened earlier this week with our hearing in the Budget Committee. My bill and I'm paired up with Scott Peters, a Democrat from California. We chair something called the BFF, the Bipartisan Fiscal Forum. And we're very focused in on our debt and our spending and the deficits that have been created. There was another bill that had been introduced by Ed Case, a Democrat out of Hawaii, and Steve Womack, who is a congressman out of Arkansas. That bill was discussed as well, but it was really more broad themed than that. And then after us, the next panel that came in was Mitt Romney and Joe Manchin. And they have introduced language in the Senate that's modeled on the bill that Scott and I introduced. Mm-hmm. And we've been working very closely with them. And here's what I do know. In a hyper-partisan moment era right now, this is going to be maybe even harder than what it had been back in the 80s when Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill and others were working on these issues. But I also know that with our debt, $33.8 trillion with a T, and the interest on that debt now outstripping what we are spending on every program that deals with women and children, almost eclipsing every dollar that we spend on the Defense Department. It is crowding out, that interest payment is crowding out our other priorities. And that's what I'm hoping is going to allow Republicans and Democrats to get together and say, you know what, enough is enough. We've got to figure out how we save this system, because this isn't a Republican saying this or a Democrat saying this. This is the trustees of the trust fund for Social Security that says in 9 years, if we do not have a solution to this, there will be an automatic 23% cut.